Hey everyone, this week's video is going to be the first in a series of videos about a simulated European Super League. If you haven't heard the idea of a European Super League, it's basically the idea that there would be a league, kind of like any of the leagues in Europe, the Premier League, the Italian League. There'd be a league, but combined of all the best teams in Europe. It's an idea that a lot of people don't like, to be honest. And I think there's a lot of wrong ways to do the European Super League. There's been talk about it being a closed league where there's no relegation. I definitely think that's a bad idea. But I think the concept of having the best teams go up against each other regularly is really an intriguing idea. We do have the Champions League, but it's a knockout format, and I don't feel like we get to, at the end, we're not always satisfied that the best team won. So the way I'm going to do this European Super League simulation is I'm going to track the teams as they play in their domestic leagues. So I'm going to look at their results, if they won or lost each week in their domestic league, and I'm going to give them a score in the Super League based on how strong the opponent that they defeated, or if they tied or lost. So first of all, deciding who's going to play in my pretend European Super League, I picked the top 20 teams based on the UEFA coefficients from the 2019-2020 season. If you're not familiar with those coefficients, it's what goes into picking the seeding for the Champions League. And I guess if you're not familiar with those, put a comment below and I can make a video or answer any questions about what those coefficients are. It's basically a scoring over a few years prior of how good a team is. So in my league, there's 20 teams. The top 5 are going to get bonus prize money at the end. This is to kind of keep going something that I think everyone really likes in most of the leagues, that there's a special feeling about being, usually it's the top 4. Top 4 right now in England or Italy, Spain, you get to play in the Champions League. So I wanted to keep that feeling of the top 4, in this case it's going to be top 5, earn something special for getting into those places. Now the bottom 5 are relegated to Super League B. So this is where I think the idea of a Super League could actually work pretty well, is if we keep relegation. The idea of a closed league, I really don't like that. I think that really does just promote, teams not needing to work hard to get better because they know their spot is safe in the league. And I've even upped it from, a lot of leagues do bottom 3 get relegated. I'm saying the bottom 5 of this Super League are going to get relegated to, just so there's a little more churn, like teams have more of a chance to come up into the highest European league. Like I said, points are awarded based on domestic league games. So each result is weighted based on the opponent's 538.com SBI rating. Again, I'll go into later what exactly that rating is. But basically it's just another way to rate how strong a team is. Higher teams with a high SBI rating like Liverpool, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Real Madrid, they have close to 100. 100 would be like a perfect SBI. Whereas, a lower down the list team, from a lesser known league, they could be somewhere like a 50 SBI. 0 would be like the worst SBI. So how I'm going to calculate scores each week for the Super League is, and I'll just mention that, the basic idea is the tougher the opponent, the more points a win is worth. So I'll show an example, just this will make it easy to understand. So for example, if PSG, in their domestic league, they're going to play a game, they're going to play this other team, Angers. Angers has a SBI of 58.91. PSG has an SBI of 89.65. There's a big difference between those two. And if you look at the scoreline, I'm pretty sure it was 6-1 PSG. They won 6 goals to 1 goal. And that's kind of how the French league works. Is PSG is this powerhouse with Mbappe, Neymar, lots of other big name players, and then a lot of other teams that are good, but they're they don't have the money to hire these huge names. Um, so because PSG is beating teams with that have a lower SBI, they're not as um, as strong as teams as Barcelona or Liverpool. We're going to give PSG a lower score in the European Super League. So they would get 1.77 points for that win. And the way I calculate that is I take, the typical 3 points for a win and I multiply that by their opponent's SPI. So the opponent had an SPI of 58.91. So I'm going to multiply it by 0.5891. And that's going to give me 1.77. So really, even though they won, because it was an opponent of much lesser capability than PSG themselves, it cut their number of points they got from that win in half. Whereas if they had been playing a much stronger team, even like Marseille, it would have been the win would have been worth more points in this fictional Super League. So I hope that all makes sense, and I hope it's an interesting experiment that I'm doing. If you have any questions or think things don't seem fair or make sense with how I'm doing this experiment, put it in the comments. I'm going to be releasing a video each match week throughout the 2020-2021 season, and we'll see at the end who wins this fictional European Super League. So that all being said, I'm going to show you my spreadsheet that I've entered in all the data to track this European Super League. So I guess to start off, and as a reminder, we're in week 4 now. I just kind of got enough I got everything up and running now to make this video. So I don't have videos for weeks 1, 2, and 3. So we're kind of starting not quite at the beginning. But as we stand, it's a little past midnight on Monday for me in the United States. But the Premier League just played their Sunday games. And so things shifted around a little bit. But first, let's go through the 20 teams that are in the European Super League. So the 20 teams that, based on the UEFA coefficients, and I'll show those right here, is, I just went straight down the list. Bayern Munich is first. We're looking at these points right here. Of course, Barcelona, and all the way down to Benfica. And actually, Ajax is there as well. And that's because I ended up taking out Shakhtar Donetsk because the data set I'm using to track these didn't have data on that team. Okay, but so here you see those 20 teams. And again, we've got most of the names you would expect: Real Madrid, Liverpool, PSG, Arsenal, Tottenham, Barcelona, Sevilla, Chelsea, Borussia, Lyon, Bayern Munich, Benfica, Atletico, Ajax, Napoli, Roma, Porto, Manchester City, Juventus, Man United. So I hope that kind of gets you excited about what this league will look like throughout the season. That we've never had, and we may never have a league where each of these top teams plays against each other in this format of tournament, where I'm trying to simulate a league where 1 week you'll see Real Madrid versus Tottenham, and then the next week you'll see PSG versus Bayern Munich. And yes, we get some of that from the Champions League, but I guess I find it, first we have to get through the group stage, and then because it's knockout, you don't see all the teams play all the other teams. You don't get that rich experience like you do in the domestic leagues, where every team plays every other team twice. So that's kind of what I'm going for. Just refreshing this data right now. Okay, so to kind of recap where we're at, and I've highlighted in green and red these, like I was saying, the top 5 positions and the bottom, the top 5 positions are green because they'll receive that bonus prize money. Bottom 5 are red because that is the relegation zone where they would go down to Super League B, the second tier of European Super Leagues. So, and just to make it clear again, we would have promotion and relegation in this idea of the European Super League. Okay, so let's take a look who's in the top. So right now, Real Madrid is leading. Their last result was against Levante, and they won. So Levante has an SPI of 67. So what that's going to mean, like I was explaining, is they got 3 points for the win, but we factor in the SPI of the team. So at about a 65-70% of 3 points is going to be about 2 points, which increased their points in the Super League to 6.93. So Real Madrid currently in the lead. One thing, of course, you have to keep in mind with any league is the games played. So Real Madrid has played 4 games, compared to PSG, for example, has played 6. So even though PSG is in the top 5 right now, they've played 2 more games than everyone else to have this number of points. So when things even out, this may not actually be that good. 6.76 for having played 6 games might put them somewhere more in the middle once things even out. So let's look at the top 5. Liverpool had a huge loss today against Aston Villa. Really crazy. So they get 0 points for the loss, and a loss is a 0. We don't weight that at all for being a lower SPI. We just say a loss is a loss. PSG had their game against Angers a couple days ago. They won that, and this was actually the example that I was showing before, that because Angers only has a 58 SPI, that almost gets cut in half to a 1.7. 3 points became 1.74. And then to round out the top 5, we have Arsenal with a win against Sheffield United on Sunday. And then Tottenham rounds out the top 5 as they blew out Manchester United to a big win. Now it's good to point out that these wins against top teams, like other teams that I'm also tracking in this European Super League, those are big points because that's almost the full 3 points for beating Manchester United because their SPI is 83.96. So you're not losing very much when we do that weighted factoring. It's almost the full 3 points. Whereas again, when France when PSG beats Angers, that the points are going to drop a lot because you're beating an opponent that's doesn't have the same capabilities as the Manchester United should have. Okay, so going down through the middle of the park or the middle of the table, Barcelona's right near the top of the middle. We've got Sevilla, Chelsea, Dortmund, Lyon, Bayern Munich's down there. Again, they've only played 3 games. And of course, it's early in the season, so we're going to see this table change a lot as the season goes on. Benfica, Atletico, Ajax, Napoli. So let's look at the relegation zone. And again, you can't say much like, oh, these teams are going to get relegated because it's so early. But it's just really interesting when you've got this kind of table with these types of teams, who's going to get relegated. I mean, you could point to like Benfica, Porto, are maybe easier to swallow getting relegated. They're not as big of powerhouses in Europe compared to a Bayern Munich, a Barcelona, a Liverpool. But it'll be interesting because there's always unexpected results in these big, long, season-long leagues. and 5 teams are going to get relegated. Um, so more than likely one name that you won't expect is going to end up being in the relegation zone. But as it stands, we've got Roma in the relegation zone, just a bit behind Napoli. Porto's down there with a loss to Marítimo. Manchester City, of course, is a big name. So Manchester City, if you're following the Premier League, has definitely not been performing as well as you'd expect. They drew Leeds United. The past, 3, 4, 5 years, you expect Manchester City to be right up there, and they'll come back. They probably won't be relegated, but they've lost, they've tied. So right now they're at 3 points. A draw against Leeds. Leeds only has an SPI of 64.26, so a draw only gets them 0.64 of a point. So they are, they're in the relegation zone. Juventus is in the relegation zone, probably more because they've only played 2 games, so their points aren't going to be that high. But they've won 1 and they've drawn 1. And lastly, Manchester United is having a terrible start to their season. Got pummeled yesterday by Tottenham and is sitting at the bottom of the table with 2.11 points. So that's the table this week, match week 4. That's where we are after Sunday's night of games. And again, things will keep evening out as the number of games played gets closer to each other. So that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll be releasing every match week. I'll be releasing a new video just to show the updated table. I will put a link to this spreadsheet. If you're interested in this kind of data and you just want to play around, you can go into Google Sheets with the link I'll give you, and you can just look at this data. I've got, this is the full raw data set from 538.com. That's where I'm getting all the match data and the SPI rankings. If you're not familiar with them, I'd check out their site. But feel free to come look through this data. You'll see this tab also is for Super League B. I've talked about that's where teams relegated will go. I haven't filled out this league yet. I do plan on tracking these teams. This is kind of what it would look like. These are using those UEFA coefficients. This is the next 20 teams that would be in that League B. Zenit, Leverkusen, plenty of teams you'd recognize as well. So these are the teams where the top 5 would get promoted at the end of the season, and they would become, part of the Super League A. So you might see Salzburg, you might see Valencia, you might see Club Brugge or Sporting be in the Super League next season. And depending on if people find this interesting, I plan to keep this series going through next year as well, and actually using the promoted and relegated teams to continue the simulation and keep it going as long as it's an interesting experiment. All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate you watching, and let me know if you have any other questions in the comments. Thanks.